Right now, somewhere in your kitchen, there's a head of lettuce in your refrigerator. And if you were to walk over, open the door, and tear off a leaf, that plant would scream. Not in a way you could hear, but in a way that's measurably, scientifically real. It would flood its tissues with electrical signals. It would release chemical distress calls into the air. It would warn every other leaf on its body that it's under attack. Which raises a question you've probably never let yourself think about. What if the salad you ate for lunch felt every bite? For most of human history, we drew a clean line between animals and plants. Animals feel, plants don't. Animals have nerves, brains, pain receptors. Plants have cellulose and chlorophyll and nothing that suffers. That line made it easy, morally clean. You could be vegan and still sleep at night. But in 1992, a botanist named Bill Williams did something simple that would complicate everything. He wired a tomato plant to an electrode. Then he cut one of its leaves with scissors, and the plant lit up. Within seconds, an electrical signal measurably similar to the nerve impulses in your own body shot from the wound site through the stem and into every other leaf. The plant knew it had been hurt, and it told the rest of itself. Since then, we've learned that this isn't unique to tomatoes. It happens in almost every plant we've tested. Corn, wheat, beans, flowers, trees. Cut them, crush them, or even touch them too roughly, and they respond with electrical activity that looks disturbingly like a nervous system, except they don't have one. But the electricity is just the beginning. In 1983, researchers at Dartmouth and the University of Washington made another unsettling discovery. They put caterpillars on willow trees and let them feed. Then, they measured the chemistry of the leaves. Within hours, the damaged trees began producing a flood of toxic chemicals, tannins, and phenolics designed to poison the caterpillars and make the leaves taste terrible. But here's what stopped them cold. The trees nearby, the ones that hadn't been touched, started producing the same chemicals. They were responding to a threat they hadn't experienced yet. The attacked trees had released volatile organic compounds into the air, a chemical distress signal, and the other trees were listening. We now know this happens across species. When you mow your lawn, that fresh-cut grass smell you love, that's a chemical scream. It's called green leaf volatiles, and it's the grass releasing a compound into the air to warn neighboring plants that they're being destroyed. Some plants that detect it will preemptively start producing defensive toxins. Others will release compounds designed to attract predators of whatever's eating them. They don't just react to pain, they call for help. Because the more we study plants, the weirder it gets. In 2014, researchers at the University of Missouri recorded the sound of a caterpillar chewing on a plant. Then they played that sound back to other plants through a speaker. The plants that heard the recording started producing defensive chemicals just from the sound. They weren't damaged, they weren't touched. They heard a threat, and they responded. That's not a reflex. That's processing information about the environment and making a decision. In another study, scientists found that when you cut a plant's roots, it releases an anesthetic compound into its own tissues, chemically similar to the numbing agents animals produce during trauma. Why would a plant produce an anesthetic if there's no pain to numb? And then there's the Mimosa pudica, the sensitive plant. Touch its leaves, and they fold inward instantly. But researchers found something stranger. If you drop the plant repeatedly from a small height, it learns that the fall isn't a threat and stops closing its leaves. It habituates. It remembers. It changes its behavior based on experience. That's not supposed to be possible without a brain. So where does that leave us? If plants do feel pain, if they experience damage in some way we can't access or measure, then every meal you've ever eaten involved suffering. There's no ethical exit. Vegan, vegetarian, carnivore, it doesn't matter. You're eating something that responded to being killed. But if they don't feel pain, if all of this is just complex biological machinery running without anyone inside, then we need to get comfortable with the idea that living things can look like they're suffering, sound like they're suffering, chemically scream like they're suffering, and that's almost worse, because it means consciousness might be rarer than we think. It means the universe might be full of things that look alive, act alive, respond to the world, and are still fundamentally empty. And if that's true for plants, how do you know it's not true for anything else? The next time you bite into an apple, pay attention, not to whether it feels pain, but to the fact that you'll never really know and that you're going to eat it anyway.